Hey, 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 I'm Michelle.
And I'm Gretta.
We are girlfriends who have always been seekers. We love learning, sharing, and most of all, we love having those soul-to-soul moments with our girlfriends.
Our podcast is about spiritual connection and sisterhood. You are not alone. So grab your glass, get comfy, and join us as we make some noise, light up the room, and
Get into it. Hello, friends. We are back with a part 2 of life transitions. But today, we're really going to hone in on Gretta's story and some of her big life transitions. So grab your glass, whatever you may have, get cozy, and let's just get into it.
Yeah, get cozy because it's going to be a long one. No.
We're here for you, girl. We are creating the space and the container for you.
I feel it. You know, it's interesting because I don't shy away from these podcast recording sessions. I look forward to them. I embrace them. I love them. I'm excited to talk about whatever the topic of the day is. But this one, I sort of was dragging my feet on, and I really had to kind of go inward and figure out why that was.
Don't you feel like this whole process of what we're doing has been pretty therapeutic and like we're actually each other's therapists in a way?
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. The reason I think it was bringing up so many feels is because it is therapy. If you haven't done it, sit down and write your story. That's enlightening. Just to sort of put pen to paper and walk through it from the beginning to where you are now is quite an experience. So I definitely recommend everybody do that. Try that if you can. So I'll just, I'll start from the beginning.
Yes, please tell us a story from the very, very beginning.
I'd really like to start with my intention on even telling my life story. My intent is that when you're listening to this, hopefully it will bring something out in you, teach you something about yourself or remind you something about what you've experienced in your life. And I hope that people get something out of it, whatever it may be, that there's some kind of little tidbit of information that resonates, that's helpful. So, okay, my life started out with a 20-year-old unmarried mom. She was living with my biological father, unexpectedly got pregnant at 19, had me at 20. A lot of people around my mom were telling her to give up the baby, me, because she was too young. This was the late 70s. And she felt connected, though, and decided to keep me. Thankfully,
yay!
I'm here.
Thank God she didn't listen to any of those people.
I know. So she tried to work it out with my biological father. It ended up being a very abusive relationship. It got real ugly real fast, and she had to leave when I was about 1.5, 2 years old, I want to say. And moved in with my grandparents. And I had, from what I can remember, the most blessed, beautiful, imaginative, fun childhood. I mean, life with my grandparents and my mom was beautiful. It was safe. I was surrounded by love. My mom comes from a big family and big Irish Catholic family. She's one of 5. And so I was just surrounded by love. I was the first grandchild. It was good to be me. And, she met my stepdad. He ended up adopting me eventually, but he's been in my life since I was 2 years old. He was a wonderful, sweet, kind, gentle man. And life was good. Life was really good. We had everything we needed, and we weren't wealthy by any means, but they did everything they could to give me a special childhood, just full of love and meeting all my needs. And I just remember thinking, like, I'm really lucky. I remember being in middle school and actually just things were really going my way. And I felt so fortunate. And I knew that there were kids that did not have the love and the family that I had. And I remember making the decision to become a peer counselor because I thought I can really give back to kids that have less than I do. My home is just so amazing, and I get to go home every day to these wonderful parents and this beautiful life. And it's amazing when I look back at that time and how quickly things took a turn. So that was just from 8th grade to freshman year. Freshman year, I was 15 in high school. And about halfway through the year, money got real tight. I mean, we went from, we were, I would say, middle class. We weren't upper middle class. We were dead middle. We went on, maybe a vacation once or twice a year, nothing fancy, but it was a good life. And we always had food in the house, and I would say we were just pretty normal. Midway through freshman year, it became apparent that my dad had developed a very severe drug problem.
And this is your stepdad.
This is my stepdad. But you'll hear, whenever I refer to my dad, this is the man that raised me from the time I was 2. So that's my dad. Great question, because it can get confusing. No, I have not seen I actually just reconnected with my biological father, but that's a whole nother story. But yeah, I did not meet him until I was 41. So that man he was never a part of my life. So my stepdad that raised me from the time I was 2 developed a really bad drug problem. But before I even realized that's what was happening, it was just, we weren't paying bills. We didn't have money for car insurance. There was just no money. There was, pretty bare cabinets. I remember just trying to make something out of nothing. My mom had to start working night shifts. My dad would just disappear for weeks on end.
How scary for you at that time? Because coming from this safe environment that you painted this picture for all of us as you were describing your youth, and then to go from that to what you're talking about now must have been really just scary and unsettling and confusing.
Yes. I remember feeling like I used to love my life and I felt safe, like you're saying. I went from that to hating to go home. And it was really sad because I have a little sister that's 8 years younger than me, because that's my stepdad's biological child with my mom. So that's why the big gap. But yeah, she was so little going through this. And I just really couldn't be there for her because I felt like I just needed to get out. Not only did we not have money and the abandonment issues that were going on with him just leaving, when he would come back, it was very volatile because he'd be going through withdrawals. I mean, the sounds that he would make, I still can hear them. It was some of the most horrific sounds. I don't know if people listening have ever experienced someone going through drug withdrawals. As a kid, I mean, I even think as an adult, it's just very frightening watching someone be so ill and not themselves. I mean, my dad went from being this funny, charismatic, warm, loving. I mean, let me just paint this picture too. He was so kind and gentle. My mom was the big disciplinarian, and we're going back like in the day. She was like, get the belt, like we're old school. Okay. And it was never abusive, but it's like, if I really, was being disrespectful, the belt would come out.
Yeah, there were no just timeouts or facing the walls back then.
No. And so she would try to get my dad to be the disciplinarian too, because she didn't want to be that person all the time. She didn't want to always be the bad guy. And I remember him like making the belt make the slapping noise and telling me to fake cry because he would not hurt a fly. Like he was just such a gentle, loving, kind man, which I, still take with me today. I'm glad that I had that experience with him when he was healthy.
Yeah, I'm watching you as you're telling the story, and you're actually very lit up right now, just the smile, and you can see it in your eyes. So
I'm glad I was able to get back to that place, because let me tell you, there were many, many years where I had so much resentment and anger towards this man. I was a high achieving high school student, really college bound, involved in every aspect of high school, like student office and all of that, and cheerleading, and had lots of friends. And I was really into like creating my life and wanting it to be a certain way, wanting to, go to college and make big things and have a good career and a good life. And then this happened, and it sort of pulled the rug out from under me, and it just sent me into survival mode. And I remember being so humiliated that I had this big dark secret that my dad was a drug addict. And here I was like, in the social circle in high school and had a reputation that I was trying to create and uphold. It was like double life kind of thing. I'm driving around in this car that's uninsured because my parents aren't even making the house payment, let alone a car insurance payment. It was a really, really tough, unstable, scary time.
And people didn't necessarily talk about things like that at that time. Or if you knew that somebody was going through that, there used to be a lot of judgment from others. So to be telling the story today is pretty evolutionary and just kind of like, wow, how you can find the words and explain it like this is strong.
Thank you.
I'm brave.
I feel, and it's funny because I don't feel brave about it. I feel proud now because of where I'm at. I do look at it like a badge of honor. I went through some shit, and this was, stuff that my parents created. I had no control over it. And I definitely learned so much. I mean, we don't go through hard times without coming away with something. And it would be great if life was just like fun and easy and everything worked out the way we wanted it to. But I don't believe that that's why we're here. I think we're here to do the work, and you don't grow unless you go through these tough times. So I'm proud of it now. But it was tough, and it was a process of getting there. I mean, I was a really pissed off teenager. I remember blasting Alanis Morissette and like whatever I could get a hold of that sounded angry, Rage Against the Machine, and all that great 90s music that had a lot of angst. So I definitely went through my phase of just being pissed off at my parents and the world. And but it was really kind of amazing when I look back. This is the time when God gave me my best friend, Jamie. I had known her since we were in middle school, but we really weren't close. We had cheered together in 8th grade and just had different friend groups. But in high school, around this time, she has always been so open and fearless about sharing her stuff. Even then, I would say I was definitely I kept this close to my heart. I didn't tell anyone I was going through this. But she was so open and almost to a fault. I'd be like, Jamie, we don't need to tell everybody everything. They don't understand. But it was amazing to have a friend that it turned out we had so much more in common than I realized. And because of her openness and honesty, we were able to bond over this. And she, has become my lifelong friend ever since. But I think if that hadn't happened, I just would have really felt so alone. So I felt very blessed that she came into my life then. So it was great to go through this and not feel completely alone and have Jamie by my side. That was huge. All you need is one friend sometimes, I'm telling you. It's all you need. So I learned a lot from this phase in my life, even though it was fucking awful. But I learned that I'm pretty scrappy. I can live on very little, which is such a freeing feeling that I can't even really put into words. It's like when you go from knowing that you can have an empty cabinet and you can survive like with no money. I mean, we had no money. And that just taught me something about myself that I think you couldn't experience from anything else. And I do feel blessed that now I can look back and say, I feel blessed that I had that experience of being dirt poor. And I also learned, this was the biggest thing. I mean, I had times where I was driving my mom's old car to, my junior prom, and the car fucking breaks down and I'm in my prom dress. And I mean, like shitty shit. But I also learned that money does not define me. I mean, and this was a dress that I had to borrow from someone because I, couldn't go buy a dress. But it's like, I'm still fucking awesome. And I remember realizing that even, as a junior, senior in high school, like I am not this piece of shit car that just broke down. I am not this borrowed dress that was like in the wrong season. It was like a velvet dress in, May. That's, but I knew from going through this, like I am so much more than this material stuff.
Ooh, that's a big lesson to
And to
learn.
get that at 16, 17,
Yeah.
I feel really grateful for that.
Yeah, because you start to really figure out who you are as an individual and not, like you said, all these things that define you or how people put so much value or attention on the material part of life.
And, even just bringing it to today, I think that's why I don't need to have like all the designer shit or like, I do like to have nice things. And we've talked about, like what a big deal it was to buy our first designer bag. But like, we didn't do that until we were in our 40s.
Right.
And I even still had like a little bit of guilt around it. And I know you did too. Like, why do we need to have this?
Yeah. And I'm like protecting it, actually. Like, nobody touched my bag. But I got to get over that.
No, it's nice if you can afford it. It's nice to buy yourself nice things and treat yourself. But it's also like what a great thing to just know that bag does not define who you are. That does not make you have value. So that was the biggest lesson I think that I got out of all of that. And then eventually, and this was a process, I did begin to learn that my parents' choices did not define me either. And, that did take a lot longer to fully get there, like probably into my 20s. But, and that was a big one because I really felt embarrassed. My dad has this drug problem. I felt like it definitely became part of my reputation. And I had to learn to separate myself from that. I am not my parents, and they did the best they could with what they had, the tools that they had. And I can do the best I can with the tools I have. And fortunately, I had a great childhood until I was 15. My parents gave me so much love and taught me self-respect and so many great values that really define who I am today. And so even when shit did hit the fan, and it got really bad, I think I had enough of that in me to be able to withstand all of that.
It's all that foundation that really, if you have that strong foundation and that sense of security and safety when you're young, and that what that love feels and looks like, when those challenges come into your life, it's almost like you have a little bit of, I don't want to say armor, but like this toolkit. I don't know, deep in your soul, you just know like you're going to be okay.
Yeah. And that was, I'm incredibly grateful for that because I think that's the only reason I survived. Because, kids can either go right down the same path as their drug addicted, alcohol abusing parents, or they can rise above and do better. And fortunately, I went that way. And the only other thing that I struggled with probably until just recently from all of this is that I did not get to be young, wild, and free. And that was a huge loss that I would say I'm still mourning that a little bit. And I think with my kids getting older and my daughter going to college, that triggers it a little bit. I definitely love that my daughter's getting to have this experience, and I wouldn't want anything less for her. But it definitely triggers that little ping in me that's still there. That's like, wow, because of your parents' choices at that time, you missed so much, like this chunk of your youth. But that's not what my journey was supposed to be. And that's something that I think I have to just remind myself of and not wallow in that. But also be so thankful that I can provide that my husband and I can provide that for our daughter. So we can give her more than what we had.
And I can resonate with what you're saying so much. And I think this is where when we share these types of stories, we find that connection or that similarity, even though I was raised very different than you. And in my transition story, I spoke a little bit about missing out on that young, wild, and free, feeling as well. And this is where we talk to each other about it. And then we go, oh my gosh, yes, I can relate to that. But the fact that you can then now take that and provide that to your kids, so awesome. And I think we just have to be careful, which you and I, we talk about this stuff too, where it's like, we don't want to live vicariously through them because we want them to have their own journeys. But how amazing that we can set a different kind of foundation for them.
And going back to the tools in your tool bag, our parents had what they had, and then they gave us a little bit more. And then we're giving our kids a little bit more tools. So that's ultimately, I think, the way things should be, is just to give your kids better than what you had. And not saying that it was wrong, but they did what they could.
Totally. And listen, the reality is we're all going to go to therapy about something. So, your therapeutic experience may look different than what your kids end up going to therapy for. But
I'm sure they'll still, my mom didn't do this or she.
Exactly. Like there's always going to be something that arises based on that individual's experience. But so thank you for sharing all this.
And I do want to also share a little bit about my stepdad, who raised me. His childhood, he was pretty much like on his own at 11. I mean, he had parents at home, but his dad was an alcoholic who used to, when he was very little, take him and his brothers to the bar for like 8 hours, and they would just have to sit in the car while he was in the bar drinking. Or he would just be gone or come home wasted and sleep on the couch. And then he had his mom who was miserable and a little insane and he found out in his late 30s, early 40s that she never even wanted him, tried to get rid of him. This is awful. She tried to get rid of him by jumping off of a kitchen table and onto her stomach.
Oh, that's awful.
His older brother actually witnessed this. So talk about childhood trauma.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then by 11, he was like, doing drugs, like smoking. I think he started smoking at 9, maybe. I'm not 100% sure on that. But like by 11, he was smoking pot, and it just was a downhill from there. And I mean, poor baby. When I think of that, I can have so much compassion for him. He really did do the best he could. And I honestly think he didn't know how to really receive love. My mom, like I said, came from this big loving family, and just gave him so much love. But I just think he grew up so isolated and on his own and didn't know what to even do with that love. Even though he was a loving person.
Right. It's interesting how, your own perspective of somebody's life can change when you really know the backstory or you know what they suffered to get to even the point where they are today or were, to be able to have that level of compassion and understanding is so huge.
So I would say there was like a good solid 10 years of me just like really resenting him and being pissed off that he stole my youth and like all these experiences. Like I said, I really wanted to go to college. And so there was a lot of anger, but I'm happy that I'm able to get to that place where I have empathy for him and the child that he was, going through this lifetime, doing the best he could with the tools he had. I met my husband. He was also another little godsend in my life. Little. He's not very little.
I'm like Steve, little.
That was a poor choice of words.
I like that little oxymoron.
My husband's a big guy. He looks like he'd play for the NFL. So little is not what we describe Steve as. But I met him when I was a freshman in high school. But he was kind of like the jokester guy, and I didn't really take him seriously. And I didn't look at him romantically at that point. Although he was like, charming, handsome, all of that. But I just didn't see him in that light until I was about 17 as a junior in high school. And he had just graduated. He was starting junior college, and we ran into each other at a party and just like talked on the phone for hours on end every night, talking on the phone for hours and hours and hours. And then went on our first actual date. And it was just like, it just all felt so right. And we were so connected. And even on that very first date, I remember still planning on trying to go to college somehow. I was like, financial aid, I'm going to figure this out. I was going to go away. I was thinking like down south. So I remember looking up at the stars and being like, I am not ready to meet this guy yet. And I remember thinking like, we were sitting on a lounge chair and he was behind me. And I remember thinking, if I look back, he's going to kiss me and then it's going to be over.
And what happened?
I looked back and that was it. And I still remember the stars to this day. Like I still remember that scene of just like looking up at the night sky and having that thought, this is it. And he felt the same way. How could he resist? No.
That's right. Beautiful girl, cheerleader.
We've been inseparable, obviously, ever since. So we're 22 years married this past June.
Woohoo.
Yeah. I mean, and we'll get into all that. It has not been an easy road, but love that man. And he really provided Oh my gosh, so much safety and love and comfort during such a hard, difficult time. His whole family really did. I really took to like his family's way of living. It was peaceful. It was, traditional and cozy. And I just loved going over to his family's home. And I think that's when they became, part of my family too. They instantly like embraced me at 17. And it was wonderful. So he did everything he could he wanted to provide for me. He wanted to work hard so that we could have a peaceful, stable home. And he worked really, really hard to make sure that happened. And so at 20 and 21, we got married and we moved into our first home. I mean, we started early, but it was like he had this sense of he really wanted to free me from that burden that I was dealing with all through high school and protect me. And we both went right to work. We were both going to school and just moving up the ladder. I mean, that's what you do in your 20s, right? We had big goals. We had mapped out our life. It was great. We were living the life and just advancing. We had decided to have our first baby after 4 years of marriage. We were like, okay, now it's time. We've done enough partying, having fun. We both had established careers. Steve was going to turn out as a journeyman. I could somewhat work from home, but the main goal was that I was going to be a stay-at-home mom. And things definitely did not go according to plan. When I was 4 months pregnant, I received a call from Steve's coworker, and he was very frazzled on the phone, crying and saying that he had just fallen off the top of a 20-foot ladder and landed on Steve, and that he was shaking and not moving. He was just laying on the ground shaking and saying that he was okay, but obviously not okay. So my mother-in-law came and picked me up because she did not want me driving, because she knew I was really upset, obviously. And we went to the hospital. It was awful seeing him strapped on this board. He was not able to move the board. It was starting to hurt him. He had been laying that long strapped to a board, like the things you don't really even think about. And he was there for most of the day. They thought he had a broken neck. They said he was fine, and they sent him home that night, which we were so grateful that he was coming home. But this was like, unfortunately, it was the closest hospital to where the injury happened. And it was just a terrible hospital, a community hospital. Really sad. There was a homeless man that died right next to Steve. The equipment was bad. It was like duct tape up, and it just shows you like how some of the poorer areas, they don't have access to the better equipment and technology. So we definitely got a second opinion. And Steve actually had a broken back. And years later, we learned actually just recently that he also has a broken neck. So my poor husband's very broken.
What you're saying is you're in your mid-20s at this point. You're about 4 months pregnant, and you get this call. Your husband has just been in an accident, goes to the hospital. They send him home, all to find out that he's got a broken back.
Yeah. And he was going to need surgery. So we were just looking back now. I realized that I thought we were just going to get past it like everything else. Oh, he's going to be better and we're going to move forward and our life's going to be great. And oh my God, that was just the very, very beginning of such a long, hard road. I mean, obviously it never goes away. We're still dealing with the aftermath of this horrible, horrible accident.
So at what point did he have the surgery? So you've been told, you get a second opinion, you've been told he's got to have surgery, and that happens like immediately, or is that?
No, it was a year later. So you have to wait and see like how it was going to heal and what the swelling goes down and all of that.
So he's at home right now for a year.
Yes, not working.
Healing, kind of. I mean, waiting.
Yeah.
And you're pregnant. So each month that goes by, you're growing and this baby's forming, and you're trying to figure out how to handle all this.
I don't even think I was trying to figure. It was just day to day, like put your head down and go, like do what you got to do. There wasn't a lot of thought involved. It was just like, what do we have to do now? What do we have to do now? I mean, looking back, we both just put our head down and like grinded and just got it done. Looking back, I would love to have gone to therapy. We needed to go to therapy, but no other adults in our lives went to therapy. Like it just wasn't a part of our upbringing or our experiences. So Lexi was 8 months old when Steve had to have the surgery. And I was put in a position where I was pulled between being with my 8-month-old or being in the hospital room with my husband, because it took 5 days he had to be in the hospital recovering. Fortunately, I have fantastic in-laws, and they took my daughter for me, but I only got to see her for like a little bit each day because she's 8 months old, wanting to crawl around and touch everything, and you can't have that in a hospital. And so they would bring her by. And, I would spend every minute in the hospital with my husband. I just felt like he needed me. And at that time, I was studying to take my real estate license exam to become a realtor because we needed money. Like he had not worked in it over a year. And I had to do something that was more. Before that, I was doing interior design, which was great. And I loved it. And I'm a creative person. But that just wasn't going to bring in the kind of money that we needed. I needed to support the family. And when we came home, he was in a hospital bed. And I don't even remember how long that was, but it was like he was in a hospital bed in the middle of the family room. And I would bring our baby up and like couldn't even hold her. I mean, I could just cry right now thinking about it. None of it went the way we had hoped for.
Yeah, you don't plan for those moments.
And actually, just recently, I had a really close girlfriend that was friends with me all through that. Just recently said, you didn't even get to have like the fun pregnancy moments where you go get ice cream and you get spoiled by your husband. And because Steve was hurt, like really hurt. And that had never even crossed my mind. That just shows you how little I thought about my needs and what I was missing. Because you don't when that kind of situation happens. You just are doing the tough day-to-day things that need to be done. And, now I can kind of look back and feel sorry for that young new mommy that didn't get to have that time that I deserve to have. But you can't sit and wallow in it. It's like, that's the way it went.
But some people do, Gretta. And that's where when I look at somebody like you, and now I'm going to cry because it's so easy for people to go into a hole and to become depressed and to not get anything done. That does happen. That is real. And you just stepped in. You had a whole role reversal where now you're, working to become the provider of the family, this whole switch that happens. And I'm thinking back to your earlier story of the foundation that was laid for you, of where you gained some of these tools and how they had to be utilized later. And we don't ever know, foreshadowing in our lives, what we might have to draw upon.
That's fascinating too, because what you just said made me think about how much I learned from my own mother. So even in that time that my dad was addicted to drugs, and I was frustrated with her because she would just sit and like pray the rosary and expect God to kind of come in and save all of us. But at a point where we were in really bad state and there was no food, she went to work. She started working night shifts at it was like an AM PM or, like a gas station, little mini mart. And, it was awful. It was awful probably for her to have to do that. My sister was still really young. And, she would have to leave us in the middle of the night and come home first thing, like at 7 a.m. and then take my sister to school. And it's just, when you said that, it made me realize, well, that's where I got it from. Like, you just do what you got to do. And the strength that she had during that time. And I definitely value that and honor that in my mother. And I'm grateful that I got that from her too. But then it's also, without therapy, there was no real processing any of these emotions. So I didn't realize I was doing this, but I was just burying.
Something was being stuffed down inside.
I was stuffing it all down and moving full steam ahead.
So wow, what a difficult time in your life that you have overcome. So another big transition.
A huge transition. And I guess if you look at what I learned from that, I definitely resented that time in my life too for a long time. I was like, fuck this. Why'd this have to happen to me? I already got through some hard shit. It's supposed to be good now. Things with Steve and I are supposed to be good.
Yeah, like I paid my dues, you know, I did the thing I needed to do, and now it's time to get back on that red magic carpet and just sort of coast, right?
That's how it felt. Like we felt very in control of our destiny. And then that happened. And I remember just feeling really pulled in 8 million different directions because I felt like I was a shitty mom because I had to leave my baby with my mom and go to work. And then I felt like a shitty wife because I was exhausted by the time I came home from work. And then he couldn't really do a lot with the baby because he was recovering. It was just, I felt like I was failing at everything. And I'm sure a lot of women can relate to that feeling. I think no matter what, we're not going to let our babies down. And so a lot of times what happens is the husband gets, kind of moved to the side. And there was probably resentment towards him too, because even after he was up and moving around and he's amazing. He went back to work. A lot of people do not. It's sad to say. I learned a lot through this process. People get on workers' comp and they just kind of stay there. I mean, and that's like a fraction of what you would have normally earned. So it's definitely low quality living. And people just sort of get stuck there. He didn't do that. He, as much pain as he was in, got up and started going to work every day again. And it was incredible. But there were other things going on. I think he kind of had his own struggles and his own losses that he was grieving. And he just really couldn't be there for me like I needed him to be. And we definitely were drifting at that time. He spent a lot of time with friends and hanging out. And it just wasn't the picture that I had envisioned when I thought about having a baby with him and what it was going to look like. And a resentment definitely started building. And I also found myself in a position when the real estate market crashed. So like 2008, it became pointless for me to even go and do open houses and try to get new clients because it was just that bad. My time was better spent at home with my babies. I had 2 babies at that time. And he was checked out. I was kind of relying on him for all of my happiness and fulfillment, which you can't do. Happiness is definitely an inside job, which we all know, but it was like, I just would wait for him to get home from work every day. I think I needed a break from the kids and adult conversation. And as much as I loved my babies, I felt so blessed that I could just be home with them and experience all the firsts with them. There were parts that I enjoyed, but I am a very social person and it was tough just not having that adult interaction on a daily basis. And my husband has a job where he would do a lot of like taking guys out golfing. He had to completely change careers after he got hurt. And it would be like a beautiful Friday evening. And well, this one in particular, he was golfing and the sun was about to set. And I remember this being a big deal because I never drank alone. I was 29 years old. And I decided to make myself a white wine spritzer with a little frozen peach in it. And I just felt like I needed something to enjoy the sunset and have a moment. The kids were playing in the backyard and I'm sitting there with my little white wine spritzer and watching the sunset. And I don't think I've ever felt like more sad and alone in my life. And I remember having this vision of me, like I saw myself in my backyard, but from up above, like I was envisioning this.
You were the witness.
This thought. I was the witness of it. Like here I am in this little plot of land, my little tiny backyard, my little house is where I spent a majority of my time. And it was like if you looked above from a plane and it was just so small and so insignificant. And I remember feeling like, is this all there is? I want so much more than this. And I had to really sit with myself and process what that was, what this feeling was. And after some time had passed, I realized I was in a depression. So that was probably I thought it was my first depression, but it was probably my second because I think I had a little one in high school that Steve helped me through if I really think back. But it was depression. And I do believe that depression is your soul speaking to you and telling you that you are not on the right path and you need to change direction. At least that's what it was for me. And that's when I picked up Eckhart Tolle's A New Earth. and read that book from, beginning to the end, just like I couldn't get enough of it. And it really did change my life. And it happened so fast. The information that I learned from that book about, forgiving my parents, taking responsibility, not playing the role of the victim. It really goes into the hats that we wear. And it's so interesting. And if you look at everyone around you and the hats and the roles that they're acting out, it's fascinating. And it actually kind of gives you a little more compassion. So it completely changed my perspective on life. And as that happened, all these new adventures started to unfold for me extremely quickly.
Real quick, I was going to say, imagine if you didn't even have that moment though, like that, you didn't take the time to make the spritzer, to sit down, grab the book. So sometimes we're in these moments in life where we think, is this all there is? But sometimes asking that question opens up so much more. And I think we said on an earlier podcast about, asking to receive certain things. And then all of a sudden it's like that book was there.
And it was God coming into my life and showing me a pathway. And I was ready for a change at that point.
And in that silence, because also when we are so busy and we don't have those moments to even be bored, to sit there in the backyard and notice the stars or notice the small plot of land. And I'm already getting a picture in my head of what I think that looks like, but to even call it that and have an image and having those moments of quiet to ponder that, to ask the questions. And from those moments, I feel like that's when all this other stuff can surface and it's like we have room for it now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was a huge growth experience for me. And I went from really feeling like there was nothing to believe in to then this hope and magic and beauty in the world just started appearing before me. And it was just one thing after another. And because my outlook had changed, I was focusing on the good. And before that, I would say things had just been so dark and dreary for so long. I mean, besides the beautiful light in my children's eyes, right? But it just, a lot of things that we had tried and a lot of the goals that we had set didn't happen. And it was, I call it the dark ages. I've mentioned that before. But now there was this cracked open feeling and this light was shining through so bright. It was the start of my spiritual journey. It happened so fast. So I was 29 when I read the book. And then on my 30th birthday, shortly after finishing the book, I went to San Francisco to celebrate with a bunch of friends. And I ended up meeting this producer who had a small little internet show about the city and restaurants and shopping. And it was fun. It was actually something I had daydreamed and always wanted to do, be a host and do what she was doing. It was so cool. She introduced herself to us and wanted to interview my friend and I. And afterwards, she gave me her card and said I was really good on camera and she'd love to talk to me about maybe doing something with her. And it was such a dream come true. And it was something at 30, I had completely given up on this secret little desire that I had since I was just, I think, little, 5 years old, probably. I would create plays and had wanted to be a solid gold dancer and wanted to be on Romper Room. I always wanted to be in front of the camera and be an entertainer, but I had put all of that aside. That was not, at 30, that was not going to happen. And I didn't even really think about it much more after that. So when this came about, it felt like a miracle. And I definitely hit her up and I did a little bit of work with her, and then she paid for me to get headshots, which I never would have put money into that as a mom of two. I just would never have, no matter how small amount it was, I would not have spent money on headshots. I just wouldn't. And Steve would have been like, what are you doing?
Why do you need this?
Yeah. And so then I took those headshots and I ended up submitting them to agents in San Francisco, and I ended up getting an agent. And 3 months later, I ended up booking a role on a TV show on NBC.
How fun.
It was like a day player role, they call it. So I made a lot of money for doing something so fun. It was a 2-day shoot, but then they asked me to come back and do more. I literally went from watching the show from my bedroom, watching these actors, to then being in a scene with these actors. It was incredible.
Wow.
Life-changing. I felt like, wow, life is magic and things do happen for you that are good and exciting. And it just filled me with possibilities. And hopes for the future. And I was hooked. I was absolutely hooked to acting after that. And it was my passion. It's all I wanted to do. And, Steve definitely took a back burner, and I split my emotional time with my kids and acting. It was like, those were my priorities in life at that time. And honestly, I don't know how we even survived that. I had resentment towards him from really like just not showing up for me before. And then I found acting, and that like became the love of my life at that time. It was so fun. So fun. But so challenging on our relationship. I mean, this guy went from, I was a realtor, an interior designer, to now I'm an actress with like love interests. And that went on for about 10 years, the acting did. And Steve and I worked through some of the stuff. It was definitely really challenging, and I'm amazed we stayed together through it all. And now at this point, it's like acting has started to fizzle, and I'm just not as interested in the dynamic in San Francisco changed a lot. There's just not as many of those type of roles that I want to be a part of coming to San Francisco. It's a lot more like tech things and commercials. And when I really think about what I want to accomplish with acting and my real desire to even be an actress, it was because I wanted to tell women's stories. And so when I get to the root of it, it's like, nope, that's not what I'm doing here, doing, a little techie commercial. So I started to sort of change my focus and invest my time and energy back into my family. My kids were getting old so fast. We started to both just realize that we needed to put energy and effort into this marriage if we wanted it to last. And the same kind of energy I was putting into acting, I needed to take that and put it into my family. Because when I really think about my list, right, they're at the very top. And that's the most important thing in life. And Steve and I both started doing individual counseling. And wow, that was amazing. That was the first time I heard from my therapist that Steve getting injured was actually my trauma too. And I had never thought about that as mine. I had never taken that on as like, I've had this traumatic experience happen to me. It happened to him. But she said, no, this was your trauma too. And that was a huge enlightening moment for me. And just to kind of give myself grace that I've been through this. And I think that's when I kind of first started breaking things down and realizing just, wow, what we have gone through with this injury that happened to both of us. And it's not selfish to think that it happened to me too. It was my trauma too. Steve started getting his individual therapy as well. And he had some incredible breakthroughs. And we also went to marriage counseling, and I just can't recommend it enough. Therapy is so, I think, necessary. And I think you can get along for a while and you can kind of fool yourselves that you don't need it and you're fine and you can work through these things and you have good communication. But when you really think about it, you're two different people that grew up in completely different childhoods, different life experiences, different parents and upbringings. And it's like, no wonder couples have such a hard time coming together and forming a marriage and being cohesive. It's like you're gonna have these, even without the trauma, like, we had, but just the day-to-day stuff. How are you going to raise your kids and discipline and things like that? So I can't.
There's a reason why there's a book called Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus, right?
Yeah. And not even just being raised in different families and what that causes, but just being different sexes.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I went back into real estate full time and wasn't really doing as much acting, a little bit here and there, but started feeling a little depressed again, started feeling those feelings of isolation and loneliness, which was weird because I was working a ton and I was out with adults and I was busy, but I just had this empty feeling inside again that I was familiar with. and started to question that and realized that I was not doing anything creative. And that was a big learning process for me. I realized I am a creative being. I need to be doing something creative to be fulfilled in my life. And when I look back at all the times when I was sad and I wasn't being fulfilled, I didn't have that outlet. So I started doing something, as simple as I like to cook and I like to create recipes. So I started doing a little food recipe blogging on Instagram. I was taking beautiful pictures of salads. It was something like as simple as that. I was creating a meal and I was sharing my recipes, and that it helped me through that time.
And people love
Thank you.
watching your videos.
Thank you. Yeah, now I'm doing videos. I've grown into that, and I'm not letting it go because I really do love it, and I don't even have like any expectations of where that might lead. I even use it myself sometimes to go back and like, how did I make that? What did I do? Because I'm constantly coming up with new things, and I rarely go back to the same recipe over and over again. So
I think you should share your handle with everybody though, because there might be people that are wanting more and need somebody fun and awesome to follow. So,
and I like just using real fresh ingredients, but also simple recipes because I don't have a lot of patience and I don't want to be in the kitchen all day. And I know you don't either. So you can find me at Gretta's_table is my handle on Instagram and TikTok.
Awesome. Thanks.
And I should say, before I got therapy, I was starting to experience anxiety. And I think that was brought on by just not having that creative outlet. So through therapy, through my, creative outlets, I was able to get a handle on the anxiety. And, I also have always been doing yoga and meditating. So even though I was doing that, I still needed that piece in my life. And I was missing acting a little bit. I still do. And I think when I haven't thrown in the towel on it. And I think if the right opportunity comes up, I'm totally open to it. And, but when I think about acting and when I really think about what the core of why I even wanted to do this type of career was because I really wanted to share women's stories. And I felt that there wasn't a voice out there. I mean, it is changing, but I didn't feel that women were really represented, especially in the independent film circle in San Francisco at that time. It's definitely evolved, but there was just a lot of men writing scripts, directing, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it was just men's stories. And I would be cast in, the supporting role. And there's just, women are some of the most fascinating people to talk to. And when I think about just when I've spoken with my girlfriends, the things that we've all been through and our stories, why are those stories not being told? And it's great because there are actresses doing that now and they're leading the charge. And I love it. But I think how interesting that fate has led me here to this point. And, there was a time when I thought, well, why, God? Why did you bring acting into my life and show me this amazing opportunity? And I mean, I basically got hooked on it. And then to just take it away. Why did you present this? And then it almost felt like a mean trick.
Little teaser.
Yeah. But now I can see that it was all to bring me to this place where how beautiful that I met you and we started, struck up this conversation about spirituality. And then it led into this podcast where we're going to talk to all kinds of women with all different experiences and empower each other and grow with each other and learn with each other. And it just feels like this was the ultimate plan and this was the destination. And I don't even know where it's going to go from here because I don't want to make it sound like this is it because, we just don't know. Life is so full of miracles and is so exciting. And yes, it is hard. And I talked about a lot of hard and negative things. Of course, there were beautiful things that I've experienced on this journey, but we really grow through the hard things. And I think that's why I focused on those pivotal moments in my life. because I don't think that I would be sitting here and with you listening to me if I didn't go through some shit. You kind of have to be in the trenches to be able to meet people where they are.
Absolutely. And throughout your entire story, I'm just thinking like, damn, this girl is resilient. And I'm thinking, that's my girl, like throughout the whole thing, every time you shared with us some just really heavy experience. And then all of a sudden it's like, and then I did this. And it was like, okay, all right, cool. She can get through these things. And I love how you shared how your mom, got through it, and then you get through it. And now let's see what your daughters, and your son's paths will be, because they've watched what's happened in your home.
Oh, and I definitely share the stories with them. They're sick of hearing about it. You know what? I used to drive to school and it broke down and da-da-da. They're so overhearing about it. And I'm glad they don't have to have that childhood experience, but I wouldn't change it, and it's funny because I wouldn't change it for myself. And it's funny because if you would have asked me that then, I'm sure I'd have been like, get me the fuck out of this situation. My friends were getting brand new Mustangs and stuff. It was hard. And of course, a teenager is going to want to have all the nice things and the new car and all of that. But I wouldn't change any of it looking back. I mean, except for if Steve wasn't hurt, that would be great.
Sure. There's moments where we're like, that can be eliminated. Right?
Yeah, we could just not have that. That would be awesome.
Just write that out of the story, please, for next time. But here you are with a mic, and you get to tell your story, and you also get to provide a platform and a space for women to tell their stories, and you get to be the creator. There are so many avenues and opportunities and so much creativity at our fingertips. All of that stuff led you to this point right now.
This moment right now with you, Michelle, and with people listening. Thank you for listening to my journey. And I'm fucking excited.
Woo! Yes. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. If you liked what you heard and we're your girls,
please share and add a review on iTunes so we can continue to grow our circle. You can also find us on Instagram and TikTok at That's My Girl Podcast.